I almost spat out my coffee when I read that XRP could hit $50 by the end of this year. I thought it was one of those crypto fanboy fantasies until I started investigating and I realized, holy crap, it might actually be possible. So here's the deal, right? I'm taking you on a journey that I never expected, a quest to find out if XRP reaching $50 by December 2025 is actually realistic. Now, trust me here, I've been around the crypto block. I've heard wild predictions before. Remember the legendary $589 XRP meme? Well, I usually just roll my eyes at this stuff, but this time, something is different. There's a specific chain of events unfolding right now that has me rethinking everything that I thought I knew about XRP's limits. And if I am right here, we might be at least all be in for some seriously wild ride over the next few months. Let's set the stage. XRP is chilling around $3 as we speak. It's not too shabby, but $50 kind of feels like sci-fi, right? So to hit 50 from $3, we're going to be talking about what? A 16x jump? That's like turning $1,000 into $16,000 in just a few short months. Sounds absurd, I know. I'm literally shaking my head saying, at least as I kind of say it, right? But stick with me here because there is a method to all of this madness, and it might just start with one magic acronym, ETF. See, a couple of weeks ago, I was scrolling through crypto news, probably procrastinating, doing something productive, right? And I stumbled on this kind of piece by Sam at the Crypto Basic. Now, the headline might as well have been clickbait catnip for me. Right? Some market commentators say that $50 XRP by December 2025, and they claim that it's actually realistic. You can cue, of course, my skeptical eyebrow rise. But instead of ignoring it, I found myself going down the rabbit hole because he wasn't just blowing smoke. He pointed to something real looming on the horizon. The SEC potentially approving XRP ETFs in October. Now, if you're not a total finance nerd, let me break that down. An ETF, an exchange-traded fund, is basically a fancy way for people to invest in something like a commodity or a crypto without actually holding it directly. Right? We've seen Bitcoin ETFs, Ethereum ETFs, and when those first rolled out, man, money poured in like someone had opened a fire hose. I remember when the first Bitcoin futures ETFs launched, right? It was like Wall Street's floodgates had burst open. Billions of dollars rushed into Bitcoin practically overnight. Ethereum had a very similar moment when its ETF products came around too. It's kind of like giving institutional investors, that's the big dogs with deep pockets, an easy button to just pile on into crypto. And guess what? Next up on the SEC's docket? Yeah, that's XRP ETFs. And apparently the SEC has a stack of XRP ETF applications sitting on their desk, all facing final deadlines in October. Right, I'm talking heavy hitters here, right? Bitwise, Canary Capital, Wisdom Tree, 21 Shares, 6 or 7 big players in total. And they have thrown in applications or updated filings to launch XRP ETFs. And get this, a lot of those filings came right after Ripple scored its legal victory against the SEC in 2023. So it's like a line of dominoes set up, at the same time. And the SEC basically has to knock them down with a yes or a no by late October. Let's think about the timing here. If one gets approved, well, that's a solid chance that several could get approved together. Boom, boom, boom. Right? The SEC sometimes likes a bunch of similar decisions together. Safety in numbers, I guess. And rumor has it that they're actually warming up to the idea. So the SEC has even been dropping guidance hints for crypto ETFs beyond just Bitcoin and Ether, while big exchanges are busy creating common standards to see these new funds. In plain English, the road to approval is being paved as we speak. If we could get the green light in October, and I'll admit it, it's still an if at this stage, then Q4 could be absolutely bananas, right? Multiple XRP ETFs could launch almost back to back in the final quarter of the year. I get goosebumps just thinking about the headlines, right? XRP ETF approved, institutional money pours in, right? Because you know what happens next, right? Wall Street money, hedge funds, retirement funds, you name it, right? They've been sitting on the sidelines just waiting for something like an ETF to give them the thumbs up to finally buy crypto. Well, these big players, they are cautious. They want that regulatory stamp of approval before they jump on in. And an ETF is exactly that. One crypto CEO, this is Stephen McClurg from Canary Capital, went on the record saying that he expects at least $5 billion to flow into XRP ETFs in the first month if they launch. Yeah, 5 billion. That was with a B, right? He's even hinted that XRP could attract more first month money than Ethereum ETFs did as well. And as I kind of read that, my jaw literally hits the floor, like a cartoon drop to the floor, if you will. Like $5 billion in new money clamoring to buy XRP. What would that even do to the price? At this point, I was beyond intrigued, right? I was on a mission to figure it out. So I kept on digging, and I found an analysis by an XRP commentator member who goes by the name 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰. He basically laid out a scenario step by step and even crunched the numbers. Quick shout out to everyone in the free educational Discord server, by the way. The link is in the description because someone there actually shared 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰's breakdown with me. The community is gold for finding info and debating ideas like this. Now, 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰 said, look, these ETF filings aren't just crypto Twitter gossip. No, they're real, official documents. WisdomTree, 21 Shares, Bitwise, Canary, all legit firms that don't waste time on pipe dreams, right? They filed for a reason, and the timing is not a coincidence. It lines up perfectly with that October decision window. Now, according to 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰, the SEC must rule on these filings around the same time, which means that we could see a flurry of approvals all at once, or denials, but let's stay optimistic here, right? And if that does happen, well, if multiple XRP ETFs roll out together, it would be like letting a horde of shoppers loose on Black Friday. It would be mayhem, but in a really good way. Now, here is where it gets really interesting and just a little bit technical, but stick with me. XRP's supply. On paper, there are 100 billion XRP tokens, with around 59 billion in circulation, but in circulation is kind of misleading, isn't it? We went through this just yesterday. Roughly 35 or 36 billion XRP are actually locked up in escrow. Ripple holds those and releases just a little bit each month. So that chunk isn't exactly on the market right now. Then a huge portion of the remaining supply is actually held by big players. Think early investors, Ripple partners, exchanges, maybe even that friend of yours who bought a whole ton back in 2017 and just simply refuses to sell. The point is, the amount of XRP actually trading out in the wild is way smaller than the 59 billion suggests. So imagine this, ETFs launch, and within just a few weeks, say $5 billion or more from pensions, hedge funds, and FOMO-filled institutions is trying to buy XRP. Right? But there's just not a ton of loose XRP floating around to be sold. Most folk would have kind of had it all holding tight, right? Especially if the price starts rocketing up. Now that's a recipe for a supply shock. Too many buyers and not enough sellers. Econ 101. The price goes up. And I'm not talking just a little gentle uptick here. I'm talking price spikes like a meme stock on steroids. 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰 didn't stop there, right? He tried to forecast the cascade of money that could hit XRP. He tossed out some eye-popping numbers. So if the ETFs attract $5 to $8 billion in inflows by late November, and then another $5 to $10 billion comes in through other channels like futures arbitrage, traders taking advantage of price differences between XRP futures and spot. Well, investment advisors rebalancing their portfolios to sneak in a little bit of XRP, even corporations adding XRP to their balance sheets. Well, hey, it has happened with Bitcoin, and we have had some news about some companies actually looking to be bold enough to add XRP to their balance sheets too. Anyway, combine all of that and you're looking at $10 to $18 billion in net new demand, aiming basically at XRP by year's end. Now, $10 to $18 billion is an insane amount of money in a rather short period. Now, for a mega cap stock like Apple, that kind of inflow might barely even move the needle. But for XRP, with its relatively thin available supply, well, that could be a dumping rocket fuel on a campfire situation. To kind of put it into perspective, we've seen assets with much larger and more liquid markets than XRP go on multi-fold gains when a wave of new money flooded in. Crypto history is full of sudden price surges when a frenzy of buyers overwhelm the market. So by this point, my mind is racing, right? I'm picturing the perfect storm then. The SEC says yep to the XRP ETFs. Suddenly, by Thanksgiving, every crypto headline is about institutions finally getting exposure to XRP after years of sitting on their hands. The price starts climbing $5, $8, $15, and as it climbs, those ETF holdings that started all of this, say $5 billion under management, suddenly swell to $7 billion because the XRP that they bought is now worth more. And guess what? That success draws in even more institutions who don't want to miss the train, which adds more fuel to the fire. It becomes a feedback loop. Price goes up, ETF assets under management goes up, and then that attracts even more big money buyers, right? Now, which basically just pushes the price up even more, right? And you repeat. It's kind of like FOMO on steroids, except this time, it's not your cousin Joe throwing in his paycheck. No, it's institutions. Giant institutions with virtually bottomless wallets. Now, I know, I'm sounding like the most bullish person on the planet right now. Believe me, I'm self-aware enough to realize that this all sounds like a late-night infomercial for XRP. So if you're new here, you're probably thinking, I've lost my marbles. Heck, a week ago, I would have said the same about anyone sprouting, $50 XRP target this year. So let me kind of take a breath and be very clear. This is a best case scenario. It is not guaranteed to play out exactly like this, not by a long shot. And hey, it's probably time for a quick reality check moment because I can practically feel the euphoria through the screen. So this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, we had to say it. You know the drill. Don't go mortgaging your house because some rando on YouTube, that's me by the way, is hyped about XRP. You've got to be smart. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, let me tell you where my head is at personally. I actually believe in this $50 possibility enough that I'm rethinking my own game plan a little bit. Right? I've got a decent little stash, XRP stash that I've been holding for a while. It's nothing crazy, right? I'm not some XRP whale by any stretch of the imagination, but I have been, quietly accumulating a little bit more recently because if these ETFs do hit, I want to be strapped in for the ride. Now, the other day, I even joked with my buddies that if we kind of got word of an approval, then I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m., chug a coffee and hop onto my BitGet account. The affiliate link is in the description and that does support the channel here, so thanks in advance, Tham. Anyway, to watch the kind of first price candle, I guess, when the news drops. Now, you know that it's going to be pretty wild, right? Actually, I'm considering spreading my buys across different exchanges just in case one platform gets overloaded when the frenzy kicks in. So I might use Blowfin as well. And yes, that's also an affiliate link down there in the description below too, which, helps support the channel here at no extra cost to yourselves. Anyway, no matter where I trade, I just want to avoid the nightmare scenario of an exchange going down right when I want to make a move. Been there, done that in the past, bull runs, and it is not very fun. Now, I won't lie, a part of me is still like, dude, Are we really entertaining this? $50. It's healthy to have that kind of inner skeptic from time to time. Keeps me grounded, right? So I did one more thing on this investigative journey. I looked into a little bit of the history. XRP's all-time high back in the last big bull run of early 2018 was around kind of $3.84. Even in 2021, when a lot of coins went crazy, XRP only hit around $1.96. And that was with the SEC lawsuit still looming over it, so kind of understandable. So $50 is literally an order of magnitude higher than anything that we have seen for XRP. It would be truly record-smashing, champagne-popping kind of event. So what could make it possible now then, when it kind of never happened before, right? Well, it's one word: clarity. Regulatory clarity, to be exact. Ripple's partial win in 2023 was huge. It basically told the world that XRP is not a security, at least not in most contexts, right? The court decision removed a massive roadblock that had held it back and been hanging over XRP for years, scarring away a lot of the kind of big money investors. But once that cloud lifted, it was like the whole narrative around XRP shifted. Suddenly, XRP wasn't toxic to institutions anymore. And now, add the ETF angle, and what we're talking about here is that, which is a kind of direct outcome of that clarity, by the way, that you have a catalyst that we've never had in previous bull runs. It kind of is really apples and oranges comparing XRP in 2017 to XRP here in 2025, because back then it was mostly just retail hype and speculative buzz about bank partnerships. But now we've got actual regulatory green lights and potential flood of institutional capital. The game has changed, which is why I'm giving this $50 theory more credence than maybe I ever would have done in the past. So let me kind of share just a little bit of the vibe from our own community discussions, because this journey of belief didn't happen in isolation, right? On our Discord, opinions are all over the place. Some people think $50 by year's end is just too optimistic, right? I've heard people say, man, I'd be over the moon with just $10. Others are even more bullish than me. Hard to believe, I know. One guy was joking, but he's already kind of picking out the color of his Lambo. I really hope that he is kidding, but you never really know with crypto folk. Now, my take here is that honestly, right, I would be thrilled even if we get halfway to that kind of $50 level, right? $25. But you can bet that I'm, buckling my seatbelt in for the full ride just in case. I also keep reminding myself and everyone who's listening that even if, all the stars align, right? ETF approvals, billions in inflows, media hype, investor FOMO hitting fever pitch, markets can still do pretty crazy and unpredictable things. Maybe a bunch of early XRP holders will choose that moment to just cash out, putting a damper on the rally. Maybe some global economist or economic crisis maybe, or who knows, right? Godzilla attacks, right? Will come out of the left field and just shake up all the markets, right? Crypto included. There's always going to be wild cards. However, right, I got this gut feeling that I just can't shake. Like, you ever get that sense, just like when something big is about to happen and you just kind of get this feel it might be at least in your bones, right? And that is me right now with XRP. Every time that I put all of these kind of pieces together, I get a mix of excitement and disbelief. It's excitement because if this scenario actually plays out, it's going to be one for the history books, and I would be stoked to just be part of it. And it's disbelief as well because I've trained myself to not fall for all the hype too easily, right? I've seen so many sure things, predictions-wise anyway, go completely bust, yet here I am, basically nodding along with what sounds like one of the most ambitious price targets ever. And here's the moment where it really clicked for me. The moment that I went from there's just no way that's crazy to wait a second, maybe it's not so crazy after all. I was rereading Pumpious's breakdown, and one line jumped out. He said that assets with larger and more liquid markets than XRP have posted multiple-fold gains under similar conditions. So I sat back and I thought, okay, which assets is he actually talking about here? Maybe gold, at least when the first gold ETF ETF launched and tons of money flowed in? Or was it Bitcoin, when that launched? Or was it some kind of institutional adoption went into overdrive maybe? And I realized that he's right. When the dams break, even a huge river can flood, right? XRP might already be a big fish in the crypto pond, but if you suddenly open the floodgates of demand, the potential upside is still enormous. I think big fish, small pond, small fish, ocean. Now, I remember, right, literally saying out loud, no one in particular, at least to no one in particular, well, maybe my cat was on the couch next to me at the time, it could actually hit $50, right? My cat just gave me this look like, sure, whatever you're saying, just feed me, right? But hey, it was a moment for me, right? I just had to share that little scene because me, wide-eyed at my desk right now, the cat yawning in the background, completely unimpressed by all of this, I must add. It's moments like that that kind of keep me humble, if you know what I mean. So the journey, all right, that I've been on this past week, from skeptic to cautious believer in a $50 XRP by year's end. Do I think it's guaranteed? Absolutely not. Am I betting my life savings on it? No, and neither should you, right? But I do think that it's within the realm of possibility now, whereas before I would have just said, no way, not in a million years. But yeah, I really do think this is a possibility now. So the big takeaway for me is that sometimes it's worth peeling back some of the layers on those wild crypto claims. Every once in a while, you do find a nugget of truth, or at least a plausible scenario hidden beneath all of the hype. Well, I'm glad that I did it in this case, right? I ended up learning a ton about how ETFs and institutional money flows actually work. And it honestly has me more excited about where this whole space could be heading next. And so if XRP somehow does pull this off, even if if it gets anywhere close to it, like into the double digits by Christmas, it's going to validate a lot of crypto believers and probably make a lot of skeptics do a double take. And if it doesn't happen, well, we'll dissect what went differently, what we learned from it, and be ready for the next big opportunity. That's the thing about crypto. There's always another avenue on the horizon. But all right, I think I've rambled enough for one video today. So if you've stuck with me this long, you're the real MVP here. You're probably just as fascinated by all of this stuff as I am, or maybe you just enjoy watching a guy emotionally ride the crypto roller coaster in real time. Either way, I'm glad that you're here. So you can go ahead and smash that like button for me, hit the subscribe button, and let's see where this XRP journey takes us all next.